Welcome to Mama Tusa, Conversations with a Midwife. I'm your host, Atusa Benji. A quick note before today's episode. This show talks about birth, life, death, and all the complexities in between. My goal is always to share stories that leave you feeling empowered, but please know that some topics may be challenging or deeply moving. Also, while I'm an experienced midwife, I'm not your midwife, and the information on this podcast is not intended to be medical advice. Please consult your healthcare provider when considering what is best for you as an individual. Now, without further ado, I hope you enjoy the show. Welcome to the Mama Tusa podcast. My guest today is Catherine Auger, who is a retired NICU nurse and a postpartum doula and a DONA certified postpartum doula trainer. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me here today.
You're very welcome. It's so good to have you. Thank you for taking time. We're all so busy. It's a busy time of year. Thank you for making the drive and for spending the hour with me. I cannot wait to hear your answers to so many of the questions I've had and just for us to have a conversation because our paths cross pretty often. So I'm a birth doula trainer. Catherine's a postpartum doula trainer. Yeah. And we share a lot of commonality in our beliefs, the way that we work, the way that we move around the space. Mm-hmm. And I'm just honored to be your colleague. I think first and foremost, what comes to mind is most people still struggle with the concept of what's the difference between a birth doula, mm-hmm. a nurse, a midwife, and what an OB does. And I am still, to this day, after 25 years of being in this field, educating about the differences. Mm-hmm. So I know that in your field, you might be, I'm making an assumption, having a similar experience with people saying, well, what's the difference between a postpartum doula, a night nurse, a night nanny, a nanny, and a nurse? What is going on here? Mm-hmm. And what can I expect to get when I hire a postpartum doula? So let's start there.
Yeah, I love that question. If you call somebody a night nurse or a baby nurse, the term nurse is protected because it's licensed. Mm-hmm. It's like you can't just call anybody a doctor because they're licensed. So you can't just call anybody a nurse if they're not a licensed nurse. So if we use baby nurse or night nurse, these are outdated terms, usually used for people that know about babies or lactation or infant care. The newest term for what we use to call baby nurses or night nurses is now newborn care specialists. And these are people that know a lot about babies. They know how to diaper and bathe babies. They know how to maybe sleep train. They take over childcare, be it day or night, where they work postpartum, helping the family adjust by taking over childcare. Very different from that to a postpartum doula. A postpartum doula does not take over childcare. We are an educator in that home. And so that means we are educating the parents how to take care of their child. Diapering and bathing, umbilical cord care. But we also help with lactation. Not all newborn care specialists have a lot of lactation education. Mm-hmm. Postpartum doulas have a very large lactation education because it's such a big component of postpartum doula work. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And we also screen for perinatal mental health disorders and use a lot of resources. The idea is that from the moment we step into that home, we work ourselves out of the home, kind of out of the job. We create an independence and not a codependence between clients and postpartum doulas. And when it comes to nannies, we don't work as long as NCS or as nannies do. They often work for 3-6 months. Nannies work for years with families. Yeah. Postpartum doulas work usually around 7 weeks postpartum. Within DONA International, it would be the 4th trimester, mm-hmm. up to 12 weeks, but it's rare that we're still within scope as a doula 12 weeks postpartum.
And what is the scope of a postpartum doula?
The scope is, again, that being an educator in that home and not taking over childcare, but it's also not evaluating babies about anything medical or the parents. We are also maybe taking over some household chores. Some postpartum doulas are amazing chefs and create incredible meals for physical recovery from pregnancy and childbirth. We also might run some errands. We help older siblings adjust to having a new baby in that home. We help within cultural considerations with other family members like grandparents visiting and the dynamic change with grandparents in that home. So we're truly, there's a doula in our community. Her name is Noemi Martinez Berry. But she said it so beautifully that she says that she looks at the family, the parents and the baby as Mother Earth. And the postpartum doula herself, she looks at the moon orbiting around it, kind of taking care of them. And I really love that visual because it's just so beautiful that the doula is not in the center. It's the family that we are orbiting around to help in these first few days and weeks postpartum.
So what would you say is the number one misconception about postpartum doulas?
I think the number one misconception is that we are overpaid nannies as postpartum doulas, which is not complimentary to nannies nor postpartum doulas. And I think that also implies there's some sort of hierarchy going on between all the different postpartum professionals. Who is better, who does more, who knows more, who deserves to get paid more. And I just don't feed into that. I think we are all absolutely incredible with supporting families postpartum or during pregnancy and birth. We cannot feed into this idea of it takes a village to raise a child when we then feel like who is doing better in that village.
Right.
Doesn't it take all of us to support one another during childbirth and postpartum? And so that for me, I think we're hurting all of us.
By having that hierarchy. It's so true. It's so true. When you are training postpartum doulas, who are you seeing gets attracted to becoming a postpartum doula? And who would you say ends up having longevity in the field and who drops out? Are you seeing a trend?
Yes. So that's another great question. So the burnout rate for doulas, birth or postpartum, is 3 years.
Yeah.
That's just remarkable if you think about
and we
it.
can talk about why also.
Right.
Many
Especially
reasons.
if you then look at us who have been in this field, you mentioned earlier, 25 years. For me, it has been over 30. Like, why are we still here?
We're still here.
Right?
Here and kicking.
Yeah. I know the people that coming to my training, I've been a donor trainer for the past 18 years. And it's different walks of life. I have a small percentage of people that say, I'm planning on getting pregnant within a year. I want to know more about it. Or my sister is expecting, or my child is expecting, like grandparents, like adult child is expecting. So that's a small percentage. Then there's a percentage of birth doulas that feel it's hard to be on call. They have younger children. They have a 9-to-5 job. They cannot be on call so easily, but they want to be in the birthing field. So for those people, I think postpartum work is absolutely beautiful until the children are maybe older or until they create enough of an income to let go of the 9-to-5 job, to jump into birth doula work.
I know that you're a NICU nurse. I know that you were born in Switzerland. Tell me more about your nursing journey and your travel to the United States.
So I worked in the leading university hospital in Switzerland on the NICU. So that means that we had the smallest, most severely unwell children flown into the hospital from all over Switzerland. And we used so many holistic approaches with them. We used infant massage, and reflexology as a form of therapy was prescribed by the physician.
In the NICU.
We used color, music therapy, flower essences, and homeopathy. We were all required to be lactation consultants. And it was a baby-friendly hospital for many years before I even started working there.
What does that mean, baby friendly?
Baby-friendly is that, so the World Health Organization has 10 different parameters of what makes a hospital baby friendly. For example, that these babies are not given pacifiers or formula, or that rooming in is happening where the baby is staying with the parent, or in the NICU, the parent is brought to the baby where they do kangaroo mother care and whatnot. And so for us, that was just common ground. We had a milk bank in the hospital. So if parents didn't have enough human milk, that there was human milk available to give to these babies, because of clear evidence how much easier human milk is digestible to formula, especially in a premature baby where the digestive system is just not fully developed.
In a premature baby human.
Correct.
Makes sense.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
So I came from a place where it was so holistically common ground. And then I moved to United States. I met my husband. He was a musician, and I was at the concert and married that man 15 months later and moved to the U.S.
musicians.
And so I moved here in 2002 and went to a few NICUs in Los Angeles and was flabbergasted with how utterly outdated things were done. Like, we also had extensive training in handling babies that don't have the muscle, bone, or ligament strength to lift their limbs because they're now not in buoyancy any longer. And I realized I could not work in a NICU here. I would constantly say, we need to change things.
Yeah, you
we
blow
can
it up.
improve. We need to come into the 21st century.
Yeah.
And so for me, the doula world is just so much more where I'm at home with all these holistic approaches that we bring to the table as doulas.
So you could have continued as a NICU nurse very easily, but the cultural component of it was a complete turnoff to you.
Completely.
So I see producer Josh over there is just itching to ask a question. Josh, what are you thinking? I see his wheels turning.
I'm just curious, coming from that background, what were the things that really shocked you that we do in the US and the NICU that maybe seemed backwards or out of date to you?
The medical system in the US is very business driven. It's all about how much money is the hospital making with insurance payments and not. Switzerland is not set up that way. So it is truly this idea that any person coming into the hospital, any patient, which the baby is a patient, we were trying to get these babies home as fast as possible. That was the ultimate goal. Through all of these means, high-tech medicine, but also incredible holistic approaches. We wanted to get these babies home because it's evidence-based information that babies thrive so much better with their parents, especially on the chest of the person that carried them. And so from a business standpoint, from the hospital perspective, that doesn't make sense. Getting people home as fast as possible. You actually want to keep them because you're getting so much paid. Like in Switzerland, a NICU stay for a baby was between $800 to $1,200 a day. That's a lot of money they're making on these severely premature babies that stay easily 2 to 3 months in the hospital, right? So I think it's truly culturally such a very different approach to why people are hospitalized and where they actually get better the quickest. To that is not necessarily the mentality in the hospitals that I have visited here in the United States. I've mostly visited hospitals here in California and Los Angeles. I cannot speak to every hospital,
Right.
but that's in mentality a very different approach. And I think it's not, what we're doing here is not necessarily helpful to the patient getting better and going home. We did that during the pandemic. We kept kick people out of the hospital 2 hours after giving birth. It's pretty remarkable.
And they did okay.
And
they
they
stayed
did okay.
alive. We gave them instructions and sent them home, much like we do in the community birth model, where people are sometimes flabbergasted, like, a woman has a baby and then you let them go home 4 hours later? Yeah. But what if something happens? Something could happen anywhere at any time. But people care about their own health and they care about the health of their babies, typically. And so if you educate them on what to look for, what is normal, what is not normal, give them a phone number that they can call, send in a picture of something that's not making them feel right, and they feel support in that way, they typically do pretty well. If you like Mama Tusa, check out Actually Useful, a show about why the tech world is broken and what we can do to fix it. Each episode, hosts Ariel and AJ talk to some of the smartest people in tech who are trying to build a better internet. If you're angry at Uber for jacking up prices, can't believe Netflix kicked you off your ex's account, or don't understand why tech CEOs can act like shadow politicians, Actually Useful is the show for you. My favorite is their episode on AI. I learned a lot about the climate cost of ChatGPT and how this AI craze is more of a hype trend than a real advancement in tech. It's a big topic, so I appreciate the team for breaking it down for their listeners. Check it out every other Thursday, wherever you listen. In the corporate med model, we are so risk averse that because of the lawyers that are just breathing down the necks and the insurance companies that are breathing down the necks, everything is about checking things off. And so we're losing some of our common sense in our perinatal, the way we treat people around this time, including the way that we treat our babies. So it's broken. It's just clearly broken.
That's an interesting point. We often said that premature babies have premature parents because they were robbed of weeks or months of pregnancy, of going through that process and starting to trust their bodies to be able to grow a child, to birth a child, to know how to parent a child. So when your baby is born prematurely, you've had so many weeks or months less starting with that trust. And so as NICU nurses, we had to really work with these parents to let them know your body did not fail you and your baby did not fail you. This was out of your control while your child was born early, and to really help work with that trust that you are the parent you're supposed to be for your child, that you are enough, you know what to do, you do know your child better than anybody else. And I think we're just losing these parents so much because we're so medically driven. Our focus is so different. As doulas, I do not go in saying that I'm an expert. I am not an expert of anybody else's child. Maybe not even of our own children. I don't know. Now, they're not my kids are now 18 and 19. I think they would have some things to say to me if I told them I'm an expert of yours,
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
So I would never advertise myself as an expert in newborns. Even after all these years of working with newborns, I think the parents are the expert of their child and nobody else is.
That's where autonomy comes in, which I always giggle about this because people have so many opinions about, oh, she breastfed or she didn't breastfeed, or, oh, they had a home birth, or, oh, they had a hospital birth, or they had an abdominal birth, or they chose to do this. And it's like, do you know that when those parents take the baby home, they are going to make a million decisions for that child that you will have no part of? So why don't we just keep the judgment out of it from the beginning? They are going to educate that child, maybe, maybe not. There might be religious preferences that you don't agree with. There might be dietary things that you don't agree with. There might be behavioral things that you don't agree with. Why do we make ourselves the expert on someone else's child the way someone else chooses to do something for their body? It's really disempowering, and it's not doing our birthing people, our mothers, well. It's not doing our babies well either.
No. And I'm going to throw partners and fathers in there.
Please.
Because I got contacted about a year ago by a man. His name is Andrew Gordon Kirsch. And he is leading support groups for fathers, or mostly for cisgender men becoming fathers.
Yep.
And we are now teaching a training to birth professionals on the support of fathers, because I think if we involved men or partners more in pregnancy, birth, and postpartum, especially when it comes to perinatal mental health disorders, then as somebody like me who identifies as a woman, I probably will not live in such a strong patriarchy where I feel so dominated by men in our culture, because men would understand us better, what we're going through pregnancy, birth, and postpartum. And I think as professionals that work in the childbearing field, we kind of fell short on how much we involved men.
Well, I think that probably happened when we started throwing women out of being birth workers. So when the propaganda began that essentially kicked midwives out of midwifery in many parts of the world, and made people believe that midwives were ancient, outdated, stupid, dangerous, dirty people who were going to kill mothers and babies, then we actually disempowered women to the core. It wasn't just the midwives that were kicked out. It was actually the empowerment of a woman having her baby that was then handed over to a hospital system. And at that time, a man. The first physicians were not females.
No.
The first experiments on women's bodies to get babies out effectively were not done from woman to woman. It was typically done from a man who graduated some medical school somewhere and wanted to solve the problem of getting a baby out of a bony pelvis. And so the disempowerment started then. I don't think it was, I think thousands of years ago, where we were surrounded by mothers and aunts and grandmothers and sisters who we watched, and we had this learned behavior of oh, that I remember my mom used to hold my baby sister like this, or my grandmother's mother nursed her. My grandmother was nursed by her grandmother, which
amazing.
is amazing. It's something we just don't see anymore.
Along those lines is also this idea, I find that pretty remarkable, that somebody that is pregnant and not high risk, who goes into labor, is the only person in the hospital that is not sick, yet they're admitted as a patient. They're not sick people. They're the only non-sick patients in the hospital, when you think about it. And when we talk about patriarchy, I personally had a child through surgery. And I will not call it a cesarean section or a cesarean birth, because that is a male term. Caesar.
Julius Caesar.
Julius Caesar. And then some people say, well, I hear he was the first one born through surgery. Well, why are we not naming it to the woman that went through it?
Julius Caesar's mother.
It's just remarkable how deep-rooted the patriarchy is, to the point like I had a surgical birth and then I had an unmedicated vaginal birth. I did not have a C-section. That Roman emperor had nothing to do with the birth of how my child was born.
We should look up her name. We should look up her name and make a revolution, Catherine. Right. I'm gonna make a note, look up his mother's name, if it's even in the books. I know you had an incredible postpartum and birth story, which I heard just recently. You and I were at a conference together. You heard some of my story. I heard some of your story. And I think we bonded on that level deeper to some extent. Are you comfortable sharing a little bit about your story and what propelled you into this work?
My firstborn was born through surgery, and I had a very difficult recovery from that birth. My incision opened up and I had an infection in my incision, and it was bedridden for 6 weeks and was below my pre-pregnancy weight 2 weeks postpartum. I was so severely depleted. And my husband was home full time. He was not on tour, so he was at home. And I live with my parents-in-law on the property. So I did have a lot of support. I think it was in the community kind of this idea of it makes you a better postpartum doula because of all the things that you have experienced, which implies that I wasn't the very best doula to begin with.
You needed that.
I needed that. I needed that experience.
You needed that particular seasoning.
Totally.
Yes.
And it also kind of implies that I deserved what I went through. And I think we just need to really learn how to not pick people up when they're not feeling well, instead of to say, wow, do you want to tell me more about that? Or how was that for you? Because that's what I needed. I didn't need somebody to pick me up or to tell me it was not as bad as I felt it was, or any of these things. I just needed, if I felt up for it, for people to listen, if I felt up to talking about it. Or to also not push if I didn't feel like talking about it, to maybe say, I'd love to hear your story if you're ever open to sharing it with me, right? But instead of this, well, at least you had a healthy child, or Brené Brown has a great video about empathy versus sympathy, and she talks about the at least message that we give people.
So damaging.
It's so damaging. It's so belittling at times, and it takes us so far away from actually acknowledging of what people go through.
Absolutely.
Finding that compassion.
Yeah, at least you have a child. At least you didn't die. Some people die. Or one of my birth doula students had lost a child very late. Actually, I think to SIDS. She had lost a child to SIDS, sudden infant death syndrome. And someone had said, your baby is an angel looking over you now. And she was like, that's really not what I needed to hear. And I think
that is such a hurtful comment.
Such a hurtful comment. She's like, I actually would have preferred if my baby was not looking over me and was in my arms right now. Is actually what I would have preferred. So I think that the human condition is to try to make someone else feel better within the context of what we think they need versus what they need. And I think so much of the training of birth doulas, the good training of a birth doula and a postpartum doula, is to keep our trauma out of the room. Because, and it's difficult, right? I think you and I have talked about this, because we get drawn to the work because we've had some sort of experience in our lives, for better, for worse, trauma, not trauma, something amazing that happened that drew us to this birth. Typically, I believe, something rattled us and we go in it because we want to make change, make the world better. And I think a little part of us wants also to heal what happened to us. That's what I believe. Now, the extent to which we can leave that out of the birth room or out of the postpartum home is really important to train our students with. And so many of the doulas I train in the birth side come in with this gung-ho, like, I am the advocate, I am the feminist, I am the woman. We're going to go against this patriarchy. But who are you doing that for? Who are you doing that for? And there's a midwife, rest her soul, many years ago who said, you cannot be working harder than the mother. If you are working harder than the mother, you're doing something wrong. So if she has chosen a male obstetrician in a corporate hospital in Washington, D.C., and you're trying to bring a home birth ancestral model of midwifery into that room, you're not serving her.
Nope.
You are not serving her. And the same thing in the postpartum period. If your belief is that babies should be breastfed no matter what until they're in preschool, or then they should be homeschooled and they should only eat vegan macro diet and should never have formula, and you go into a family that's like, we don't want to breastfeed. We're going to formula feed from the get-go. and we're actually going to have nannies watching the kids and we're going to travel. If that doesn't fit with your model, then maybe you're not the right postpartum doula unless you can completely put that aside and hold space for someone else's experience, which some people do better than others. How do you train your postpartum doulas when it comes to that?
I think for me, it has something to do with ego, with this idea that I know best. I know how other people should raise their child. And it goes back to this idea of that I'm an expert in someone else's home about their children.
Right.
And I think working as a doula, be it any kind of full spectrum doula, you have to leave your ego at the door and understand, not my child, not my journey. It's not. It's just not. I need to help these people understand what is your journey. And then my job as a doula is how to support that journey by asking a lot of questions. I talk a lot about that. If my client says, I want to sleep train my baby very early on, instead of judging them for saying that sentence, I can ask, can you tell me more? Why is that important to you? They might say, I have to go back to work 2 weeks postpartum. Oh, that makes sense.
Makes sense. Yeah.
Or I can ask, what does it mean to you? My baby should be sleeping through the night. Like, what does that even mean? You can ask 20 people and you have 20 different answers to what means sleeping through the night, right? Or that I can say, how would you like to achieve that for your baby to sleep through the night, right?
Tell me more.
Tell me more.
Inquisitiveness.
That's right. So
Inquisitiveness.
it's very difficult to stay in judgment and curiosity at the same time.
Love.
Right? So I really kind of hammered that point home in my training. It's like, okay, we all have biases. They pop up instantly.
Yeah.
But what you do with that bias, that's what's important. So can you check your bias and realize that, oh, that just did something to me, that sentence. Okay, I need to table that. I need to address it when I'm not at work. But I want to know more about it. Where would you like for your baby to sleep? Or they ask me, Catherine, did you give your babies a pacifier? And can say, oh, that's a good question. Tell me why you would like to give your baby a pacifier. Yeah. Do you have any questions? Maybe some concerns?
Yeah.
Right? Be really that inquisitive doula instead of the judgmental
doula.
Mm-hmm.
We're seeing such an increase in doulas coming into the workforce, both birth doulas and postpartum doulas. Now, I believe there seems to be, when I was training, there was almost like a sexiness to birth doula work. Like it's birth doulas always had more students in the field, more birth doulas accessible. And now we're seeing more postpartum doulas coming into the workforce. And we're also now seeing Medi-Cal covering postpartum doulas and covering birth doulas. Can you talk to me a little bit about the good and the bad and the ugly of this happening?
I personally think there's not enough postpartum doulas yet. We just need more. There's so many families that have a baby daily and they go home with no support. What I do see is that, when you take a training, you remember 20%.
Yeah.
I totally get that, right? But I would like for them to take the essence of what doula work is with them. That truly, as postpartum doulas, you do not take over. It's not your job to take over for them. That truly be an educator in that home. Work yourself out of the job. Create an independence and not a codependence. And so many doulas immediately fall into kind of a caretaking role where they take over childcare and where parents go out for dinner and the doula stays at home with the baby. And they don't think about liability issues with that, right? So for me, I then have a lot of doulas that within 3 years are burned out. And to me, or we know it's mainly because they're working too much and they're not getting paid enough. And you always hear, wouldn't you rather get paid more and work less? So this idea of having insurance coverage, Medi-Cal, Medicaid, is really helpful because it kind of counterbalance this burnout rate because doulas are getting paid what the doula feels she deserves while families still can get the help that they need.
What's the downside?
I think the downside is that these insurance companies will want to control us. And rightly so. They're paying thousands of dollars, especially Carrot is spending thousands.
It's very generous
of
reimbursement.
Dollars. Yeah.
Very generous.
At some point, they will want to control us.
So that means the scope, the certification. I know some
Liability.
states are talking about licensure even for doulas.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that?
I think you cannot have one without the other. Do I like the idea of some entity controlling us? No, I don't. Especially when we look at where do doulas come from and the ancestral work that has been done and whose shoulders we're standing on today as doulas. But nonetheless, you cannot expect insurance companies to pay hundreds of thousands of dollars in doula care without wanting to control us. I wonder if that is a possibility. To me, right now, I don't think it's a possibility. So I think as doulas, as professionals, what we need to control is what parameters do they fit us in?
Right.
But that they are going to fit us in some sort of parameters, I do think that's just going to happen.
It's just natural. It's going to be organic. 2 questions. One, what does one have to do to become a postpartum doula through DONA? Secondly, why have you stayed with DONA for all these years?
So you do not need to have any prerequisites becoming a doula within DONA. None. The 2 youngest doula I ever trained were 16.
Yeah, me too.
Right?
Both doulas, yep.
Yeah. And the
And amazing.
oldest doula I ever trained was 78. Well, I've trained hundreds of doulas that don't have any children.
Yeah.
And some of them have children. So you just need to have a passion for postpartum families and this caretaking kennel of gold inside of you that you want to take care of people postpartum. You're going to make a great doula. Why have I stayed with DONA? Over the years, I always contemplate, is it the right organization to stay with? But I would rather stay with an organization where I know what issues we're having, where I know that they're very committed people working on these issues, commitment to making change, than jumping ship, either doing my own thing or going into another organization where they have similar issues or other issues. And there are so many small little one-person organizations that I don't need to be one more doula that thinks that, again, I think it has something to do with ego. I do not believe that I could do something on my own better than what is happening within DONA International.
I feel similarly that DONA obviously had its growing bumps and growing pains, and it didn't start off as it's not a corporate model. And it's not professionals and people making millions and millions of dollars at DONA. It is a grassroots organization started by people who gave heart and blood and sweat and tears to get it going. And so it's going to have its growing pains and it's going to have its things that it has to learn across the way. And I think we are growing and we are getting better, and we still have work to do for sure. For a family seeking a postpartum doula, what would you say they would look for? And how much can they expect to pay?
So there are plenty of doulas that offer their services low cost or no cost, especially if they're still in the certification process. In general, a newly trained doula is usually around $35 per hour. And in the metropolitan city, kind of Los Angeles, Seattle, Chicago, New York, really big cities, postpartum doulas will charge up to $120 an hour. Most areas in the United States, the doulas will go up to $75 an hour, even rural areas. For families seeking a doula, I've learned over all these years of going to all these interviews that my experience is tremendous. My resume is very long. And ultimately, years ago, I was hired because of chemistry, because they somehow felt safe with me. Right. And after all these years, it's the same thing. It's not so much about my level of experience or the length of my resume. It's about, do they feel safe with me? Yeah. So I think choose a doula that you just vibe well, that you feel like if I'm really at my most vulnerable, that doula will hold me kindly in the palms of their hand. I'm going to be safe with her or with them, whoever that doula is. That's going to be the right doula.
I love it. And the training for a doula involves a workshop, which is how many hours?
27 with Doula
27
International.
hours. And that includes a breastfeeding workshop, or is that separate of the breastfeeding?
There's a really big lactation component in the postpartum doula training that, depending on the donut trainer's credential, covers the lactation portion
Of the
for
education.
certification.
And how many families does that doula have to serve before they can be evaluated by a board that then certifies them?
3 families, 12 hours minimum per family, and these 12 hours in 3 separate visits for each family.
Perfect. And then is there an exam at the end of the training? What qualifies someone to become certified?
No exam ever. So the doula will go with Doula International through a certification process where they have to fill out some paperwork. It's not rocket science. It's honestly just going down the list of paperwork. And during these visits with the families, the doula will then go home or to leave the client and kind of write down, what did they prioritize in that home? Was it physical recovery? Was it something with the baby? Was it lactation? Was it mood disorders? And how did the doula take care of that priority? What did the doula do in that home during these visits?
I love that, because when I train birth doulas typically have a couple of postpartum visits as part of their birth doula contract.
Right.
And what I used to think when I was a young green doula was that when you are a birth doula and you're going to their house for a postpartum visit, you are going to debrief about the birth. Very quickly, I realized that's not always true. So what I train the doulas now to do is to treat the postpartum visit as a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get. Sometimes you come into a beautifully clean home, mother and baby are doing fine, breastfeeding is going well, and the person really wants to talk about their birth because that's priority on their mind. Other times they're not coping. They're not showered. They're not fed. There's not enough food in the house. There's maybe abuse going on. There's children that are struggling. There's addiction. There's so many things that we see in a postpartum home that healthcare providers do not see. I feel like community midwives, we see a lot more because we do home visits, but a family leaves the hospital, doesn't see an OB for typically 6 weeks, maybe sees a pediatrician at 2 weeks, maybe if that's part of their value system, but no one checks in on anybody. And so there's so many things that we catch that nobody else would have. And that's the power of the doula, is we're the boots on the ground, where we can be like, I can't diagnose, but I know enough to tell you that's not normal. Call your pediatrician, call your obstetrician, call your midwife. Let's take a picture and send a picture into your healthcare provider. Let's get some food in this house. Let's get resources to get you some diapers, because we're the ones that see it. Can you tell me a true success story during a postpartum visit that had you or another doula that you trained or know not recognized it during the visit may have been detrimental?
A true success story for me is, it might not be as dramatic as somebody would expect it. For me, a true success story is when my alarm is going off with, there's something off with this baby. Something just doesn't feel right. You can't pinpoint it. I start asking a lot of questions. How often is your baby feeding? Your baby's awake. Is your baby alert, awake, hungry, angry with you? Or are they lethargic? Like, do they sleep a lot, right? You're dealing oftentimes with first-time parents that have no clue what is considered normal. And I use that word loosely, like what is normal even, right? But they don't know what would be the norm of how a newborn baby behaves versus not. So once I start asking a lot of questions, they suddenly look at me and they say, Do you think everything is okay with my baby? Then I say, I think the only person to evaluate that is your pediatrician. I think it's really important that you go and have your baby checked out with your pediatrician to make sure we're not missing out on anything. Because that's where the trust starts. That you know your child, right? And so these success stories, I think, we know with evidence-based information that as postpartum doulas, we save lives because they barely see their pediatrician, midwife, or OB. That as postpartum doulas, we have a tremendous impact on telling them something feels off. Yeah. I think you should go and be checked out or have your baby checked out.
Yeah.
It's pretty amazing if you think about it.
So powerful. Versus, I'm assuming that in Switzerland, birthing people are getting visits at home. For how long? What increments?
Daily, the first week.
Wow.
And then it's weekly for at least the first month in the home. And then they go to a place where there is a lactation consultant or La Leche legal leader, somebody with a lot of lactation education. But also, these are nurse practitioners that specialize in postpartum. So there's continuous support for as long as the parents want. And these visits are all part of health insurance.
Are part of care.
Care.
It's not like you're scrambling to find this and that and the other in your most vulnerable moments. I have a client now from another country who is trying to have her baby here. And she's like, I'm just stressed out in trying to find care and establish care. It's why do I have to pay separate for this and pay separate for that? Where I come from, everything's included. And our model is so broken and we have so much work to do. I'm so grateful to have you on the podcast. It's really an honor to have you and spend this time with you. Let my listeners and viewers know where we can find you.
Thank you so much for having me.
My pleasure.
My website is Los Angeles Doula. That's my Insta handle. Yeah, losangelesdoula.com is me.
And you're working actively as a postpartum doula or mostly training?
Mostly training. I still work actively as a birth and postpartum doula. But limited as a birth doula, very limited, but still very active as a postpartum doula.
And how lucky is the family that can have the same person for both?
Right?
That continuity of care is just priceless.
I agree. And it's also a big honor for me to do both.
Well, they're very lucky to have you. Thank you, my friend.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to the Mama Tusa podcast on the Industry Plant Podcast Network. Mama Tusa is hosted by me, Atusa Benji, and produced by Josh Stretton Carlson. Our theme music is composed by Mehri Lalazarian. If you enjoyed the podcast, please consider leaving us a review and subscribing. See you next Tuesday.